Thanks very much for the introduction, Neil. Delighted to be given this talk, especially to be considered one of Scotland's digital disruptors. If indeed I can disrupt the market we're in, we will certainly have succeeded in our aim. So I would like to kind of start off by setting the scene a little bit in terms of the internet and search engines. First of all, the internet is populated with now close to 5 billion internet users. I think when I last looked at the end of last year, it's about 4.5 billion, which is a phenomenal amount considering there are less than 8 billion people in the world at the moment. So almost everyone that can be connected pretty much is now connected. And of course, almost every one of the internet users will be using a search engine. It kind of goes with the territory. So I think we can safely say we are all using search engines. Many of us use them on a day-to-day basis, several times a day. The consequence of that, of course, is we've all become experts in the subject of search engines just because of our exposure to it, especially technical people believe they kind of understand search engines and everything that sits underneath. And I guess this has led us to getting a bit of feedback when we decided that we were going to build our own search engine. And these are just kind of some of the comments that we typically get from people, or we certainly did at the start. It's not going to work very well. It's going to cost tens of millions. It's a stupid idea. You've got absolutely no chance. It's going to take us years. Are you mad? You can't compete with Google. And even I can recall on one occasion sitting next to a friend of a friend I'd just been introduced to, and I was introduced as this guy, Gordon, who's building an alternative search engine. And he kind of looked at me and said, "Aye, good luck, pal," and kind of turned the other way and never spoke to me for the rest of the evening. It's not an unusual reaction, shall we say? But why did we build it? We have actually built it. First of all, it's not just a dream that we're actually going to do. We have built a search engine and it has been launched. Why did we do it? I guess there's two threads to this. There are personal reasons, which I'll go into. There are reasons why I decided it would be a good thing to do. And there are also commercial reasons. Why is it a viable commercial thing to actually consider doing as well? So I'll touch on both of these things as I go through the talk. But if I start off with the personal side of things, I guess I can rewind back to my days as an academic. I was teaching at the University of Edinburgh, electrical engineering and some computing stuff. I was a fairly early user of the internet, the web and search engines. And up until 1998, I had been using this. Some of you will be familiar with Alta Vista. It seemed to be the best thing available at the time. Then it was in 1998, a colleague of mine said, "Have you seen this new search engine? You perhaps want to try it. Some guys from Stanford University have built this thing." So it was Google. So we had a look at Google. This was 1998. I tried it. I liked it. Now, the reason I started using Google in 1998 was because it was actually a better search engine than I'd been using before, which was Alta Vista. It gave me better results and I liked it. At that time, Google, as you can see here, had about 25 million pages ranked. If you consider today, it's not known exactly, but it's believed that they have Google have ranked at least 100 billion pages, which is quite interesting considering there are only less than 8 billion people in the world. So we've each got a lot of web pages and URLs out there. But of course, since these days, since Google had an exclamation mark at the end of it until closer to today, Google has changed quite significantly. It's still doing the same thing, but the way it does it is somewhat different. So this is me in 2016. I had actually grown fed up with Google. First of all, I was getting a lot of adverts. They were in the main rankings, which didn't used to be the case. I didn't particularly like the ads and some of the stuff that came with it, but the particular thing I didn't like was the fact it could track me around the internet. There was one occasion I can remember in particular, my mom was needing a new shed. I did some research. I wanted to build the base. I wanted to figure out the best type of shed, and I wanted to see about the best shed to buy. So I was looking at prices. So over the course of, I guess, a couple of weeks, I had done a lot of searching about sheds. So what Google clearly decided was to profile me, and decided I was some kind of shed geek, and everything that I was going to see on every page I looked at thereafter was going to feed me adverts about sheds. You know, buy another shed. I'd already bought a shed. I don't know why it didn't suggest I should perhaps buy a lawnmower or something like that. But no, this was kind of what was happening. If I decided to go and look at a page on Kylie Minogue, let's say, what would appear is some content about Kylie, and all the sponsored content would be ads related somehow to sheds, because of the way I'd been profiled, whether it be top 10 celebrity sheds, or buy your shed coin, or just some sponsored content about sheds. This is typically what was happening in the internet. I didn't like this. My solution was actually to move to an alternative search engine, which was DuckDuckGo. Now, the reason I moved to DuckDuckGo is DuckDuckGo preserves my privacy. It doesn't collect all my data. Therefore, it can't actually, things can't follow me so easily around the internet. It couldn't have branded me as a guy that's really interested in sheds. However, there was still a problem though, because DuckDuckGo didn't actually deliver me better results than I'd seen on Google. When I was actually on the search engine, I still got all the ads which were related to my keyword searches. And all the results weren't actually any better, and I was still seeing commercial bias, etc., within the results. So my shift to DuckDuckGo didn't actually improve my search experience. It did improve other experiences around the web, but in a sense, it wasn't actually a better search engine. It was just one which respected my privacy. And that's part of the reason that I actually thought there must be a better way to build a search engine. We have built it. This is what it looks like, and I'll show a demo of it a little bit later. We claim it is a better internet search engine, and we'll go into the reasons why it's better. One of the principal reasons is it's not just privacy preserving, so no personal data abuses, but there are no ads. That brings certain problems in terms of revenue model, but we figured the only way to actually make it much better was to change the revenue model away from ads. So let's consider ads for a minute. Oops, we'll go into this. So this quote about advertising funded search engines being inherently biased and search engine bias being insidious, I totally agree with that quote. But that quote, interestingly, came from a couple of guys in a paper back in 1998. That quote comes directly from the Stanford University paper written by the Google founders, Brin and Page. It's the paper where they describe PageRank, which is the thing that made Google actually better. And there they're actually saying the danger of advertising and the fact that you no longer become the real consumer. Everything is biased towards the advertiser. And of course, that's exactly what has happened. Now, in a sense, we can't really blame Google for that in a sense, because in these heady days of the internet, there wasn't really a lot of buying going on the internet. There were a number of users, and display advertising and pay-per-click was one of the few things, in a sense, that they could actually do to try and monetize what they were doing. The thing that concerns me more is the way it's, I guess, evolved. And there's an interesting book here, some 20 years later, by George Gilder, and he was actually looking at the impact of this now. So the worst case scenario that Brin and Page were considering has pretty well happened. And we also find that the free isn't very free, because on average, smartphone users, according to this calculation, is paying about $23 per month for all the ads, the trackers, the scripts, and the other diversionary chaff that bears, of course, malware. This causes load times to slow down. It piles on cost our data plans, depletes our batteries, and basically doesn't respect our privacy. So that's the kind of current climate. So it begs the question, is the display advertising model for search still relevant? Well, it's certainly very well established. It is the dominant form of revenue for the internet in general. There are hundreds of billions of dollars generated by ads, a lot of it related to search. It's relatively easy for advertisers, especially the bigger guys with budgets to access these display ads. It's claimed to be accurate targeting. I mean, it's questionable, but there certainly is targeting of your ads to specific types of users. There's revenue for publishers, for example. You know, if you're not behind a paywall, the way to monetize your content, whether it be a newspaper or whatever, is often through ads. And of course, there's a huge catalog of these ads available. But just in general, it seems to work well for large publishers that have a lot of traffic, and it seems to work well for large brands. So that model certainly works well for them. But of course, on the user side, it's unpopular with users. We don't like ads in general. We don't like the data harvesting. We certainly don't like the clickbait, the fake news, and the scams that come along with a lot of advertising, which we see. For the user's perspective, it's very inefficient. It's our device, our screen, our processor, our bandwidth that's actually being consumed to present these ads. We're paying for these. Advertiser isn't actually paying anything. They don't pay a thing unless we click on something. We have to pay for all the display of this. It's a bit like, you know, an advertiser asking us to pay for a billboard at the side of the road. We would never do that, but that's effectively what we're doing online. It's also becoming increasingly ineffective. We're developing ad blindness. We're paying less attention to ads rather than more attention, despite the claim that they're more targeted. And there's an awful lot more ad blockers around. So what is really happening with display ads is we're finding that for the users, they're not really good. There's a lot against these ads for the users, but also if you're a small or artisan brand, it still doesn't actually work particularly well for them. Works for the big brands, the people with lots of traffic, but paying for lots of pay per clicks when you're not actually sure if they're going to convert or you don't know how to work the system doesn't work so well for the small guys. It is, but you know, however, it's still highly relevant, and it is very, very well established. So if we consider the conventional model which uses ads for search, this is generally what it looks like. User wants to search the web via the internet. They use a browser and a search engine. They go searching. There's an ad server sits alongside it. Personal data, for example, you know, this guy seems to like sheds, so figures something about you, decides on ads that should be targeted towards you. And when the user clicks the ad, that's when the advertiser actually has to pay for that ad click. That's the conventional model, and that's how search engines principally are funded at the moment. Our alternative model that tries to get away from that, so we don't need to use ads, has been implemented like this. This was our model, and this is what has been implemented thus far. You go to browse, the rest, it's much the same. You use a browser, use our search engine. Instead of an ad server, we've got a thing called a wallet. The wallet contains tokens. This is our currency, our internal currency. There's a cost to searching. It's a cost to us on the platform. So each time you make a search, we consume one of your tokens from your wallet. So you keep searching, tokens will go down. But these days, a lot of people actually come to the internet with buying intent, and search engines are used in one shape or form. That's not necessarily Google, might well be Amazon or whatever, to find the things you want to buy. So a lot of online sales are generated these days, and search actually helps in that process. And so what we're able to do is actually allow people to earn tokens when you buy something. If we provided that lead, most retailers are actually willing to give you a commission if you actually bring them that sales lead. So we're not advertising, we're finding the stuff that people are actually searching for. You're actually looking for a product. If we find that product and you end up buying it, we can earn a small commission for the platform, so we can top up your tokens. So your tokens get topped back up. And a small commission on a product can earn you a lot of tokens. Of course, there's the possibility in our model that you can continue to search. You don't buy anything at all. What will happen is your wallet is eventually empty. We do have ways, a number of different ways of topping up the tokens besides purchases. The one implemented at the moment, the direct method, is, well, you can quite simply buy some tokens. So it becomes paid search, but we're slowly developing ways where you will earn tokens through the system. Anything that earns us revenue, we can actually top up your tokens. It's possible that you'll have more tokens than you need for searching, and we've got ways of how you can actually use these in other ways or transfer them to other people, which I'll mention briefly. So this is the emerging opportunity that we saw, which is that search traffic hasn't really been increasing much in recent years because we're reaching near saturation point in terms of the number of people using the internet. We're not going to be making more searches each day. We're not going to get more ads because about 50% of our screens can be filled with ads, and basically there is a certain limit. Therefore, the potential for revenue growth in ads for search is pretty limited now, whereas when display ads started as the main revenue method, there was very little in the way of online sales and e-commerce. But if you look at the way things are today, it's growing, and it's still got a lot of potential for growth, unlike the number of search users themselves. So our premise is there's a nice inflection point here where our model actually becomes more attractive than the simple pay-per-click model that we see at the moment. So the argument is that the landscape is changing, and the model that we're using, although it would not have worked in the past, seems relevant to today's internet. And if we look, this is data for the UK, what we see is the number of users has been increasing. This is about 2.5 times. It's increased with more people using smartphones, etc. So it's increased about 2.5 times over the last 10 years. Interestingly, if you look at the internet sales, they've increased about 5 times over the same period. Admittedly, there's been a little bit of a peak over the last year because online sales have been driven because of the COVID pandemic and shops actually being closed. But even if it were to continue along a straight line, it would still be 4 times or more. What you can see here is this was going up in a straight line, and it's shallowing off because we're reaching saturation point in terms of there aren't that many more people in the UK that are actually going to be going online and searching because most people who can are already online. Whereas online sales have reached, well, they were up in the 20%. We actually peaked up at 31% of all retail sales in the UK. But there's still a lot of headroom for more online sales and for that market to grow. So that's kind of the premise, in a sense, that we've been looking at. And then on the search side of things, rather than just the revenue model side, if we look at who we consider to be our main competitors, who are the privacy-preserving search engines, they have been growing quite substantially, especially in later years. I think DuckDuckGo rose 42% in the last year. Now, remember, these guys are doing pretty well, but they're doing it with only one real USP, and their USP is it's privacy preserving. They still have all the ads. They still have many of the other things that I don't particularly like about other search engines. So the landscape there is changing. The other aspect is there is a movement towards privacy, security. People back in 2010 were not really aware of data harvesting of their personal data, etc. They're much more aware now, and there's a movement, including the Next Generation Internet Trust in Europe, that's basically saying we want to make a more human-centric internet, not one that is controlled by large corporations that have effectively taken control. We need services that are more in tune with the user rather than the needs of large businesses. There are also people like Tim Berners-Lee has developed a contract for the web where he's saying it's fundamentally broken. We want to fix it. We want people to actually sign up to this charter that actually says we're going to behave and treat people fairly on the web. Other things that have been happening on the legislation side of things, there was GDPR, which basically gives people rights over how their data is being used and gives them consent, the ability to give consent, whether their data can be used for specific things. Possibly from our perspective, even more powerful is the Digital Markets Act, which is more about dealing with unfair monopoly positions of the digital giants. So we are talking of Facebook, Google, Apple. If they use their monopoly position to do things that are unfair, that squeeze out competition from the little guys by using their monopoly in unfair means, then the Digital Markets Act will kick in. One example for us is we are not currently listed as a potential default default search engine on a browser. With the Digital Markets Act, they will probably be forced to allow small guys like ourselves initially to actually be able to be set up as the default browser, let's say on Edge or something like that. And echoing some of the stuff in Europe, of course, the USA is following a lot of that. The California Consumer Protection Act is a bit of an echo of GDPR, for example. There are currently antitrust cases going on against Facebook and Google in particular. These are happening at the moment and more next year. And these antitrust cases are basically about people, again, using their powerful monopolies to create an unfair playing field. There was quite a famous antitrust case against Microsoft some years back that said it was unfair that they were forcing people to use Internet Explorer, for example, because it was shipped as part of Office, and they pretty much forced people to use that. That was considered unfair, and that part of their monopoly was broken up. And you can actually see where Internet Explorer went, or the Microsoft Edge stuff is just a small part of a market that's open to many. So you can see that these antitrust cases really can break up the markets and start to give a little bit of power back to the little guys that are up against them. So this is the landscape that we're operating in, which is, so commercially, it's not a bad time to start a new search engine if you genuinely have a way of actually making it better than what is currently available. So just to look at the platform we developed, the first development of it was over the course of a year, from September last year. We developed, on the right-hand side is actually the very first user interface. We had web, image, video searches. We then added maps, and with some feedback, we started to work on the user interface, which is quite important. Our revenue model, of course, is based on some of the product search stuff. We had a prototype with retail sources, which include Amazon, eBay, Etsy, and Awin, to give us a wide range of products that we can actually pull into that search. We have implemented the search token system, including ways to actually top up your tokens in our platform. And from late 2019, we were doing alpha testing in the labs at Edinburgh Napier University. That came to an end, of course, with the lockdown, and everything has been done remotely since then. But we're doing continuous testing. And at the end of that part of the project, we were in a position to release an MVP beta, which was released on the 1st of October, and there's been 100+ users actually using that. The search engine has actually now been launched beyond beta, and that happened on the 22nd of December, just before Christmas. So it is live with real users at the moment. This project, just to say, this was in collaboration with Edinburgh Napier University, and it was kicked off with support from the Next Generation Internet Trust, which itself is part of the European Horizon 2020 programme. So that's funded through the European Union. The current product, here's some screenshots. They're actually quite old, but it's just a placeholder. What I'll do now is I'll just go to the search engine, and we'll fire it up under the Brave browser. It is actually the default search engine that's set here. So if I just decide to search for something, this will automatically use our search engine. One that I've before there, obviously. So if we do a search for Janis Joplin there, you can see we get general search results, web search results on Janis Joplin, as you might expect. We've got a news category that was added in quite recently. So if you specifically want news, which is kind of recent stuff, 7 days ago, 18 hours ago, 13 days ago, etc. The recent stuff, you can get that. Videos, obviously, most of these are on YouTube, but it does look at various sources. Images, I actually know in my version that I'm showing you, which is an admin version, that there's a formatting problem. that one of our developers, Malky, is working on at the moment. Our live users don't actually see that. Something to be sorted. But this version also has things that our live users aren't seeing, because this is my admin account. We don't have shopping available for users. This is at alpha at the moment, so it's just been tested by a number of users. But if you want to go shopping for Janis Joplin products, here they are. What you can see is there's a number of sources there. It's managed to find some things on Etsy, t-shirts, etc., whereas there's stuff coming in from Amazon. We've got we've got 4 different sources. The difficulty there is it sometimes takes time to actually load all these things in. So we have some plans on how to improve this. What you actually notice as well is once all the results come in, it can actually say, well, what was it you were interested in? Was it t-shirts or was it records and CDs? So we can actually select the categories that we're actually interested in once it's found these things. So shopping's something we're busy working on. Maps is also something, again, it hasn't been released for users, but it's been worked on. We've got some nice vector maps. We can do directions and all sorts of things there. So that is a very brief, I'm going to have to move this window out of the way so I can get access to. You can see here there's also a user account. Same amount of credit here. Just refresh that. So if we look at the account, so we've got account settings. I've got an account here, password, etc. It tells me how to set it up on various different browsers. I have a token account. So you can see what I was doing there. I was doing some image searches, video searches. You can see the tokens actually going down. There are some things, I think if we go forward, I did something. You can see there was a free token. So I did something, I answered some questions. I was able to gain myself an extra 20 tokens. So we can actually see, we can see our token system working there. These are test users that we're letting you see. I'm not going to go into user management. We'll let you see the kind of statistics. Again, these are test accounts, but you can see registrations that have been added in. You can see the number of searches, the types of searches people are doing in the statistics. So that was a very brief whistle-stop tour of the search engine, just to show you it's up and running, and we've got this interesting token system running in the background. If I go back. So I would like to introduce you here to the development team. These are the people that built it, our main development team, and also Owen from Edinburgh and Napier University that helped us with a number of things, including the search algorithms, and we've got an advisory board team here. So we've got a pretty small team that actually put this together in a short period of time. Where are we going with this? What is the future? It's not announced yet, but we do have a new project, again, with further funding from the Next Generation Internet Trust. We have got a collaboration starting with a Danish company called Partisia, which is on data security. Again, there's a press release coming out, possibly this week or next week, that will give more details. So I won't actually go into what we're doing with them. Our tokens at the moment are not on blockchain, but we're about to put them onto the blockchain in the next few months. Interesting, that then makes them more secure, but also means they're transferable. So if you've got excess tokens, you can take them off the platform, you can do other things with them, you can donate them to friends. It basically makes them transferable, means you can even buy and sell them. Our product search will be going live for users in the next few months. We're doing a lot of testing on that at the moment. We have an equity crowdfunding planned for the earlier part of this year as well, which will help to fund things, but also bring in some evangelist users. Our product search, we have plans to make our searches more ethical. For example, if someone is concerned about they don't want counterfeit goods, we can try and eliminate these. the carbon footprint of goods. We can try and measure, we can measure how local the goods are, so we can put in a number of ethical metrics for people actually looking to buy more ethical products or buy locally. So that's in the plans. We also have plans for machine learned ranking to actually work on our ranking algorithms in order to produce more relevant results and remove some of the bias that we're seeing. We don't have much political bias in the results, but there's certainly still some commercial bias. People can buy themselves top ranking by spending money on their SEO and content management, for example, but it's not necessarily the content you're looking for. So that's where we're going with this. Really, just to recap here, why are we better? Why are we called better internet search? If we compare ourselves with incumbent search engines, we're ad-free, so we've got ad-free search. We're privacy preserving. We've got a unique token system, which is going to be secured on blockchain. Our product search is moving towards ethical product search, and we have a user-focused business model. So we're not trying to sell advertising customers. We are totally focused on the user. So on all 5 counts there, we are different and differentiated from the current incumbent search engines. And oh yeah, just this is the way we're typically compared. I keep finding this with journalists, etc. It's always David and Goliath story. But that sort of presumes that somehow to be successful, we actually have to topple Goliath. The reality is it will take 10 years, I think, for there to be a shift, maybe for Google not to be the dominant search engine. However, it's such a huge market, and I think we're in a good position. I would also say that it's not us alone that will do that or some other company. We're part of a movement that is actually trying to change things that aren't quite right with the internet. So we're a small part of that, but it's great we're part of a movement, because that's what actually causes things to change. So it's not really David and Goliath story here that we're often depicted, in, especially in the media. But just on that note, I think finish up really just by saying happy birthday to Rabi. He's 262 today, a nice palindromic birthday. So thanks very much for listening, and hopefully everyone's going to have a great Burns night. So that's me. Thank you.